Welcome back to the Color of Money podcast. Today, I'm joined by my special co-host, Miss Julia Lashay Israel. And today, we're going to be talking about starting over. And so on the journey of wealth building, or building wealth for that matter, we often have setbacks and challenges along the way. It's not just growth and success, right? So on today's episode, we're going to be discussing the journey and how this path is not a linear path to financial freedom, and how you handle these setbacks and how you continue to keep a positive mindset and deal with some of the chaos. So welcome, Julia. Good to see you. How you been?
I've been good, Daniel. I feel like we just did this. Wasn't it me and you on the last episode?
I think it was.
Or did we have a couple in between there?
No, I think it was just the two of us.
Yeah. We're making a thing of this. Yeah.
So when we think about like the wealth building journey, a lot of times when you see people speak on stages, it's always just about the success and how much they win and, you know, all the good things. But the truth is a lot of these journeys from inception to success or the top of the mountain is constantly littered with setbacks and challenges and mishaps along the way. What are some of your challenges? I know we talked a little bit before we got started about starting over. I mean, I have a lot of feelings about how you start over in the mindset, but yeah. How do you think you handle it?
Well, first of all, the starting over thing, the reason we're even having this conversation is because I've done that more than a couple times. Initially, I talk a lot about, I bought my first house when I was 19, right? I had saved up my money. I had 3.5% down for my FHA loan. I saved up my 3.5% down, which took me a long time because that was a lot of money, you know, when you're 19. So I got all of those things. And so people kind of think that it's just been this ever since then, this, you know, full on trajectory of wealth building. And for a lot of people, especially like myself, that's not the case. I did start to buy a lot of property. People, by the time I was 23, these kids today kind of shocked me at like, I don't know how soft they are, I guess. Because by the time I was 23, I had 2 kids. I had a business, a property management business. I had 6 properties, you know, like, I was doing it. And then when the crash happened, prior to the crash, I guess the onset of the crash, like I really thought I was very successful for a young person. Like I said, I had a real estate business. I was selling real estate. I owned a lot of properties. And then the crash came, and the first thing that hit, it wasn't like, you know, when you're in a, what do you call it? Like a catastrophe, you don't necessarily know that you're in it in the middle, like on the onset. So how I identified we had a problem, first thing that happened is I had 6 properties. They were rented out. 2 of my tenants went to jail. And that this is just real life. They went to jail, and then they weren't paying the rent, obviously. Right. Which means that I would have to cover that. The problem was my transactions start falling apart. So like I had transaction after transaction after transaction falling apart because, again, we're in the height of what people were doing, crazy stuff. People were selling property. I mean, we were doing crazy deals back then. It was ridiculous. How many people were getting houses that shouldn't have been getting in houses, all that kind of stuff. And my transactions were falling through because of that. And I wasn't able to pay for that. And then the one tenant that I thought was a sure thing, this guy just went total. He was just missing in action. So a bunch of my tenants weren't paying. I couldn't pay them because I was a realtor. And then you start seeing that the market is doing a thing. Yeah. And ultimately what ended up happening, I foreclosed on 2 of them. I sold 2 of them. One of the banks actually took me to court for the second mortgage because I had a second mortgage on it. They literally sued me for the money. After foreclosed, they sued me for the money. I'll never forget that. And that went on for a long time. And I found myself with going like from way up here to having absolutely positively nothing, like couldn't pay my own mortgage, didn't have a transaction to save my life. Nothing was happening in real estate, but problems during that downturn. And I had no money. And so I thought I was on a journey, and I filed bankruptcy. What else happened? Filed bankruptcy, 2 foreclosures. The tenants went to jail. Seemed like a dog should die somewhere in this story, you know,
somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't have a dog, but, all of those things. And so then I found myself, that was the first time I found myself in a situation, where I was going to be starting over.
I think this is an interesting conversation right now because we in the real estate industry we've seen a lot of pain over the last like 18 months since rates started to go up. And I've talked to a lot of agents that have had to sell houses and haven't been making money selling houses. It's like actually, being a realtor, and they're so discouraged on thinking that it's ending now and not understanding that this is just the middle of the story. So how did you get back on, how'd you get your mind back on track to recognize and not feel sorry for yourself and recognize this is just, it is what it is. And then now I got to get back, start building this again.
So, well, I didn't. I was in my 20s and I was sitting in that for a long time. I mean, I remember one time driving down the street and these people were leaving McDonald's, like they worked there, they were employees. And I was jealous, right? I was jealous of the people working at McDonald's because I was like, man, they got money coming in and I didn't have any money coming in.
Well, I mean, now in California, they're making like $22 an hour or something.
And McDonald's, yeah. I don't know what they were making, but I wish I had it. That's what I was.
Right.
But it wasn't. I actually said, and Daniel, I actually did end up, I'm using air quotes for those that can't see, getting a job. I stopped selling real estate and I became a broker at a competitor. This is the part of my KW story where we say I ran away from home because I needed a paycheck. I wanted to get a job and I needed a paycheck. So I went and I was the broker for a competitor. And I wrote for a couple of years, I wrote that out with the paycheck. And that's how I kind of started to get my money back on track. I know when we first started this podcast, I talked about raising 2 kids on $40,000 a year. That's how much I made. He paid me $40,000 to be the broker at that business. And I made just enough money to not be on welfare. But no, I was trying to be on welfare. They wouldn't let me be on welfare because they said I made like $2 too much, right? So I made too much to actually get any services, but I didn't make enough to actually, And so I remember there are certain things you can do, but I mean, that was probably a point where for me, it was definitely a pride thing. Because I had come from owning all these things and I had these fancy cars and all these houses, to really standing in the county office trying to see if these people will give me some food stamps, which they did give me one time and then they made me pay it back. But the reality was I needed it, right? Like I needed it. And even I got a bonus from him. He gave me a bonus one time of $1,000 on my check. I had to have him take it off because I'm like, they're going to take away my daycare assistance. If you give me an extra $1,000, that's too much. Mm-hmm. So it really is a mindset that you could just sit in there and feel like you really did, like it is, and like but like you're saying, people are doing it now. And what I learned, the key to that, what I learned from that was how I would do things differently, and that there really never is a real estate crisis. It's just how do you pivot in the time, right? There was a saying, and it really did I've never forgotten it. And it changed what I thought about money and how I prepared for hard times. On the radio, that was back when we had radio. Do you listen to the radio in the car still?
Yeah, Power 105.9 was the best thing in California. Absolutely. Big Boys neighborhood.
Yeah, well, this was back when we used to listen to the radio, but a guy on the radio said, never waste a good crisis. Mm-hmm. And ever since he said that, I thought, you know what, I'll never be unprepared for a real estate crisis ever again. So no matter what somebody's deeming a real estate crisis, somebody might think this is a crisis, right? It's not. But if you think it's a crisis, are you prepared to just pivot in it? So for me, what that lesson taught me was when the next shift happens, whatever that shift might look like, I'll be ready. And I spent all of that time from that incident to the next incident, because I've started over several times, to the next incident, preparing for the next incident because I wanted to be ready when a crisis happened. So the preparation changes. So instead of just sitting there and wallowing, I kind of figured out, well, what's the plan to get back on track? You have to have goals, right? Set some goals to get back on track, and hit those goals and then prepare. And I think we even had an episode where we talked about preparation, getting ready. And I got ready so that when something else happened, I'd be ready already.
Well, Gary talks about failure all the time and how you got to fail your way to success. And when you have these setbacks and you have these challenges on this journey, I think what people lose, people are afraid of failure. I think that's a strong sentiment from a lot of the agents that we work with. But this fear this failure that you had, these foreclosures, these not being able to close homes and the bankruptcy and everything else, all that did was give you experience.
Right. And at the time, you don't know that, right?
Correct. It's hard to look at it through that lens at the time. But then you get out and you're just like, oh, that was stupid. I shouldn't have done that way. I wasn't prepared for that. And then it's like almost like recreating this next iteration of who you're going to become.
Well, I think that's great. You said that perfectly, Daniel.
Thank you. I think that this, I've heard it before. A lot of millionaires don't talk about the first million you make. You got to lose $1 million, then go build it again the second time before you get respect for being a millionaire. And I think that's a really good rule, you know?
It's a good thing that basically you're talking about like reflection. And during that time, that's what my mom kept saying. She was like, all millionaires lose their first million. And I was like, yeah, but I wasn't no millionaire. I just lost my first, I was a thousandaire and lost my thousands, right? Like,
right.
But I think like you're saying is, it is wisdom that you gain. It is experience that you gain. But in the moment when you're wallowing in it, you don't see it that way. But while you're wallowing, reflect, right, on things that you'll do differently next time. You kind of examine what you can do differently and really what your values even are. Like what is actually even important to you to get out of that. But yeah, for people who think that this is a crisis now, it's not. I can tell you, you do not have the wisdom and life experience of then. That was a crisis.
World
this
was
is
collapsing,
not. Yeah, this is not. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting though, because we have in our market, we're down like 33% year over year. Yeah. And so when you think about, and it's this real moment of saying all of my income, I'm commission-based employee, and all of my income is derived on buying and selling real estate. And then you go, well, what happens if people are not buying and selling real estate? Or what happens if I can't sell the amount of houses I did last year? And I think what it's done for me, because we've had to start over and redo the team and redo the mortgage company. And as we keep taking these challenged years, and what it does, it makes you realize how much more prepared you should become, how much more money you need in reserves. How do these key hires, how important they are for you? I think starting over and burning it down, that's one of the things my team has to stop me on, is burning everything down to the ground and starting all the way from scratch again.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing though, because the second time around, like you said, you have experience, you have some different values, and sometimes it's necessary to burn it all down and just start over. And I think people have fear. Sometimes people stay in something or stay with something far longer than they should because they're worried about the unknown. And the reality is you got to shake that fear, because maybe it is time to just burn it down and start over. So I think probably what you're talking about is the fact that you're not afraid and you bet on yourself, right? You're like, I'll just start over. But for people who don't have that courage, I think maybe that's another thing. Maybe you should have to have some courage in order to even start over from a place like that, for sure. Yeah.
Well, how do you think you get your mind right? I think, I don't want to call it mental illness, but like when your brain is off, or you're feeling sorry for yourself, or you just can't catch a break and you just need some good news, like how do you get your mind right to be able to go see the opportunity once it presents itself, and not looking through such a tainted or damaged lens? When you are going through pain, a divorce, some financial troubles, health issues, kid problems, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, the reality is I think a lot of times we forget to be grateful for the things that we do have. And even the simple things that, so gratitude, I think, helps pull you out of that a little bit. Because I said I was jealous of the people walking out of McDonald's because I knew that they were going to get paid. But the other reason I was jealous was because they were walking. I had I was really, really sick. I had this pneumonia that I was fighting, and I couldn't breathe for a long time. So I couldn't, them just walking down the street, not just because they had McDonald's money, but they were breathing. And breathing was hard for me. So I think sometimes it's we don't even think about the small things. After that experience, I was just so glad to breathe. I started running. I took up running. That's when I took up running. And so I was like, why do you run? I was like, yeah, because I was like,
I can breathe.
I can breathe. I was so excited about it. But the small things, I think gratitude is the first thing of thinking about the things that you do still have. Right.
It's so underestimated, or just even looking at a concept like the gap versus the gain. And a lot of high achievers focus on the gap and what they're not doing and not getting in a place of gratitude and seeing how far you've come. Or
explain the gap versus the gain. I've heard Jason Abrams do that before, and I thought it was pretty powerful.
So when you think about climbing a mountain, if you think about you're at the base of the mountain when you start and you get to the peak, right? Wherever that peak is, whatever success means to you, oftentimes as we continue to keep winning, we keep looking up, and there's all at the top of one mountain, you're at the bottom of another mountain. And so oftentimes high achievers continue to focus on keep climbing, keep growing, keep achieving, and we don't take a step back and look down and see how far we've come. And so it's the mindset of looking at the gap of what you're not doing, or what the difference between what you want to become versus how much you've gained since you started, or this year or this quarter or whatever it is. And I think it's reflection is something that is so powerful and not used enough by very many people, literally at all. Even something as simple as just going through your photos over the last month and seeing and making yourself smile over some of the memories and experiences you had, or people you spent time with. It'll help you stay in that sense of being positive and thankful for the simple things in life, being able to breathe, being able to drive, having a car, having a roof over your head, having healthy children, having healthy parents, like all the things. We're go-getters, and it's always about what's up next and not thankfulness of where we've come from.
That's 100% it. And even you said something there about thankful for the kids, because that was the next time that I had to start. I've started over a lot. I did start to build after that. Of course, I came out of that. I went back to KW, right? And I was the MCA, and I was rebuilding, right? Having goals, really rebuilding. And I was this time around, I was building with someone. I got married during that time, and we were building. We were building a family, and I had all these goals, these financial goals, and I was really into the money thing. I was tracking things. We bought property. We had some. I was really into tracking the money, tracking the goals, and setting up the kids for financial success. All of this was like part of the plan. And I was working towards that, and everything was great until it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I found myself, I found myself in a divorce. And when I was going through the divorce, you mentioned kids, my son died. My son got sick. He had cancer, and it was quick. And he came home from college, which that was part of my financial plan. That was all, I had a plan. You have this master plan, and I had an entire plan of how this was all supposed to look. This is what I was going to do with the money. This is what we were buying. I had a whole plan. And then all at one time, the plan crashes, and I'm now divorced. And then my son was sick. He came home from college with stage 4 cancer, died 4 months later.
Wow.
And I didn't have anything again. Lost everything in the divorce. Walked away from most of it. Like, you can have everything, and left town. I didn't even I left. I went to a whole different state and was like, that. Now talk about starting over. It's like, I don't have none of the stuff. I don't have none of the family members. I went from a family of 5 to myself in less than 6 months, and starting over in a whole new state. Now, a lot of people can relate to starting over in a new environment, which in and of itself is really hard to do.
Especially in real estate, with the real estate business.
Especially in real estate, because we work through our networks, right? And our sphere of influence is how a lot of people start a business. Anything in real estate really is relationship based. So starting over in a place where that's unfamiliar, that's a whole different type of starting over. So I started over that time too, financially. And I think, Daniel, that's when I was introduced to the net worth tracker that we talk about. And I remember I had a coach. That's the other thing I would recommend. When you're starting over, or at any time ever in life, get a coach. I got a coach. And they said, where are you at? And I said, 0. I got nothing. I got no family, no kids, no money, no nothing. I got nothing. I'm at 0. Also, though, to your point of when you're like, I'll burn it all down, I had a lot of confidence in myself. Like, I didn't mind starting over. I'm like, no, you can keep these houses. You can have all of that, because I'll just go start over. I know how to get it again.
Yeah.
And so it's not I started all the way over in Texas. Started all the way over and from 0. It's kind of like, by the way, for those of you who haven't listened to, I don't know what episode it was, but Sophia Chacon was a guest. You remember Sophia, Daniel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we called it starting from the bottom. Now I'm here, right? So that's part of it is getting a coach and doing those kind of things to restart over. So I started over in a whole new state, started at ground zero, got a coach, and then again, you set goals.
I think one of the things that's so important is community. And I think when you think about having a coach or a mentor or a pastor or friends or any of those things, like they're the ones that help you continue to pull through and fight, because we often get in these ruts and then we want to try to figure it out on our own, or we don't want to ask for help, or we don't, we just want to deal with things a more difficult way. But having that sense of community and those coaches and mentors and friends and family and community around you, I think is so important to be able to lift you up and keep your head on straight and keep your mind right, keep you in a place of gratitude. Yeah. I think that's imperative as well.
Also, again, like you mentioned, everything in life is about experience. There was something I remember listening to that says, nothing you've been through will be wasted. Right. So we go through these tragedies. You go through a loss of a child. You go through a divorce. You go through a foreclosure. You go through a bankruptcy. I've been through, I can't really think of anything that is like a traumatic life experience that I haven't been through. You go through all of these things, and there's the thing that nothing you've been through in life will be wasted. So even if you are in a current rut, the beauty of that is that when you get out of it, because you always do, it does not rain forever. When you get out of it, you've gotten out of it with so much more wisdom and probably a different perspective on a lot of things, to start over again. So I have used those tragedies as really experiences for the next time around. And then when you get back on your feet the next time around, you do it twice as fast. Like I went to Texas and I feel like I went to sleep, took a nap and woke up and I was back. I'm back, right? It doesn't take long because I have the experience, I have the wisdom, I have the knowledge, also you have the tenacity. Also, you don't mind getting knocked down because you'll get back up, So it happens to the best of us. Like you said, when we were just starting this, financial wealth or whatever that journey, it is the journey. It's not a linear process. You might lose it all. But in that loss, you learn a whole lot of things that you'll get it back twice as fast next time.
You will. And I think that the challenge makes the journey so much more rewarding, right?
It does.
And I think for a lot of the listeners, I think this is an important episode because it's not easy. It's not fun. We've all had our challenges, our gut punches, our chances to start all the way over and lose a bunch of things and stress. And it's just part of the journey. And once you can get out the other side, you'll look back and that'll be one of those moments of life that you can say, put your flag in the ground and say, oh, that was it. That time in my life shaped the human that I am today. Mm-hmm. And so don't be fearful of those challenges. Continue to have that confidence in yourself and build that self-confidence. Because once that shakes, one thing you and I both just talked about is being able to bet on yourself. But when you start going through these losses, Julia, and you start looking at having to start over, oftentimes your confidence is shook. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right? As soon as that goes, everything else starts to go. So what are some tips you'd give to the listeners on continuing to keep that confidence as you're starting over again, as you've lost it all, as you're going through heartache? How do you maintain that confidence in yourself and your skills?
Well, I think that's it. You just said it, the skills that you have and the knowledge that you have, and whatever you did to get it the first time, you obviously have the wherewithal, right? So I often think about this. There's a quote that says, the bird doesn't worry about the branch breaking because it knows how to fly. Like I said, some people will sit somewhere and be like, oh, for jobs, for example, some people are like, oh, I'm going to stay in this job. Oh, what if they fire me? What if they fire me? What if they fire me? I don't ever have that fear because I know that I got this one, I can get another one, right? You have the confidence of, I have wings, so I'll fly, wherever. But again, you have to have some things happen to you to even have that confidence. You have to have taken some hits to be able to be like, you really can't do nothing to me, right? I'll be fine. But you don't know that until something happens to you and then you come out and you're fine. So the tip is to gain the skills, fail sometimes. Take some chances. We talked about, I think it was episode number 2, we talked about taking risk. And I remember saying I was very risk averse, but the reality is I'll go to a whole nother city, a whole nother state. And like you said, I'll burn it all down and start it all over. Like, cause I will bet on myself. But that's because you've actually taken the knowledge to read something. If you haven't experienced anything, read something, learn from other people's experiences. You can still use other people's wisdom, to gain knowledge and things like that. And once you possess that, particularly the industry we're in, Daniel, that's why I'm a huge advocate for entrepreneurship, because we have skills that people can't take away. Somebody can fire you from a job, cannot take away. Yeah.
Cannot take away.
Some people work a job and they're worried they'll get fired. But for entrepreneurs, you have skills that can't be taken away. I'm a huge advocate for trade school, right? Like if you learn how to if you're an engineer or you have skills people can't take from you, you're going to always be good. So I think part of what you said was just what skills, get skills, acquire some skills, learn some skills. It builds confidence because, you have things that no matter what happens, if it all burns down, because sometimes it does, that you'll be able to build it back up because you've got skills.
No, I think that's great. I think that's a excellent way to end this episode on starting over. Lean into your skills, know what you do well, keep fighting, keep your mind right. Any other last words, Julia, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think what I would just say is don't be afraid to start over. If things fall down, what'd you say, Daniel? Every millionaire loses their first million. It's all part of the journey. It is not a linear journey. There are ups and downs. You will start over, and just hone in on your skills. I think that's a great way to end it. And I think that's all I have to say about that. It's just part of the process. It's all a journey.
It's all a journey. Don't be afraid to start over. I love it, Julia. Thank you. Listeners, until next time, we are out.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.